Hello and welcome to the final round of Wayports Racing League Season 3 Division 1. 10 rounds of racing comes to an end today and the end of the 2021 Wayports Racing League's year, in fact. I'm Peter Butcher and in the commentary box with me this afternoon is Travis Mellinger. Hi, Travis.
Good morning, Pete. I'm trying something new today, the sophisticated accent. It didn't work out. I'm doing well, thank you. This is Pete. This will be exciting. You'll talk about this in a minute. I'll give us a little bit of teaser right now, but there are a lot of different ways that this could shake out. Vertex need a little bit of luck, but there is a race on for a championship today.
There is indeed, and the stage is set at Kyoto Ring National in the reverse configuration today, unlike last season where we were on the regular clockwise direction. Let's have a look at that track then, a refresher for those of you who haven't seen it. It's a 5.1 kilometre, 3.2 mile track using the oval and the infield at Kyoto Ring inside Live for Speed. We've had 60 minutes of qualifying, of which there are 8 minutes left, and we will show you who is leading the way in just a few moments' time. Then we will move on to a 19-lap race around this fantastic circuit with a mandatory pit stop thrown into the mix as well. The championship standings, Travis, the championship for this season and next and the overall year have been wrapped up by Mariano in the Drivers' Championship, but it's all to play for in the Teams' Championship. So here, let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship. That's how it will stand. There will be no changes for position at the top. Mariano has won Wayports Racing League Season 3 and with it the 2021 season. But over in the Teams Championship, it is a very different story. There are so many permutations of what can happen here between the top two teams. The McLean Library currently leading Vertex by, just over 10 points. Vertex, they're down in P2. So there will be some changes potentially in the top two, but not really anywhere else, Travis.
That's right. And we'll talk about some of the possibilities here at the top. It's all but locked up for McLean Library, at least if we think in terms of how the past rounds have gone, because Mariano has been so strong. But today, Andy has put in the practice. He's running really quickly. Santiago, I would say, maybe you'll disagree with me, Pete. Maybe you'll agree with me. Santiago and Valentina have been pretty even on pace and performance during the season. So a really good finish from Andy, a little bit of luck. If he takes off the really important points from Mariano for fastest lap and pole position, Vertex might just squeak out a team's championship here.
Yeah, if it finishes the way it is on the timing tower at the moment, and Andy gets the fastest lap and pole position, McLean Library would win by one solitary point. However, if Valentina drops down to 5th, for example, Vertex would win by a solitary point. So it is very close, very, very close. It could go either way if Vertex currently convert their qualifying performance as it stands into a race performance. Mariano's got a lot of work to do to try and win, because if he wins, that is, pretty much a guarantee that McLean Library will win the Teams Championship as well this year. Let's wait and see. Andy currently leagues ahead, has to be said, of Mariano, 6.5 tenths. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a fairly long lap, a little bit more than 2 minutes, but we're accustomed to seeing Mariano at the top with a pretty clear margin in pace. There have been a few rounds where Andy is close and then kind of falls off in race pace, but here, Andy much quicker than he has been. We're not accustomed to seeing him ahead of Mariano in qualifying. If he is, it's by a few hundredths or a tenth or so. But today, a clear margin. He's obviously been putting in the practice. He is keen to win a race and try to snatch a team's championship away from McLean Library, who look like they have had it locked up for some time now, but still to play for. They need a bit of luck. Andy needs a perfect performance today. And he needs a little bit of bad luck out of Mariano, which Mariano has not had for some rounds now. He's had strong performances, and for the most part, all of the trials and tribulations of the races have gone to his competitors, and he's largely avoided them. So today, the theme is Andy and Vertex need some good luck. He needs to convert this early pace into a good result.
Yeah, we're watching Mariano approaching the final two corners of the lap, the final two corners that involve any sort of effort anyway. A hard braking zone down into the first one, and this will be at the end of another lap in qualifying for him. He is, it has to be said, a long way ahead of the next Vertex car, Santiago, 1.2 seconds there or thereabouts, as he heads through this final little chicane, a flick right and then a flick left onto the massively wide oval. That doesn't mean we won't see some drama on the oval. If you flash your minds back to the end of season 2, there was a big accident running down to turn 1 on the oval that Mariano's just driving around now. Obviously, it's the final corner here on the reverse configuration. Let's see, can Mariano improve his lap time in the dying moments of the session? 4 minutes to go and only time to set a handful of laps, Travis.
Yep, coming through the start-finish line right now, 2:17:38. He doesn't improve his own time. He's a half second off his best time right now. He's got, he crosses the line with about 4 minutes left in qualifying. Sounds like, he was on the brakes. Yeah, he's backed off and gone to the pits. He'll be able to rejoin, and maybe he'll have time to set one lap. He didn't have quite enough time to get out and go around twice. He'll be coming out of the pits now, and he will only have time to set one more timed lap, as we see Andy coming through the final corners up toward the banking. He'll come around turn 1 of the oval and across the line, looking to improve even further, though he has a clear enough margin. He doesn't really need to go much faster. I think at this point, Pete, he is probably just running clean laps to feel comfortable with the car under him, get as much time as he can feeling out the car, building that confidence to go deliver in the race.
Yeah, it is not an improvement across the line that time, but it doesn't matter right now because he's done everything that he needs to do just now to keep Mariano at bay. One more lap time from Mariano is all we're going to see at best. Let's see what Santiago can manage. He's coming out of the final corner. He's got a big margin to make up, 1.8 seconds to Andy at the moment. Let's see, can he improve on this run? Santiago has been improving a lot this season, Travis, but he's still had some up and down results.
He really has. He had that very good finish around Aston Cadet. The Aston Cadet reverse circuit took a surprise win on a very strong performance. Excuse me. Don't know that we expected him to run as well there and win. We learned in the interviews after the race that Andy had a little bit of damage and wasn't able to challenge him. It was one of the few rounds where Mariano had a bit of bad luck and fell back. So Santiago converted the luck that went his way into a strong performance. But as you said, since then, not as much luck, hasn't been as strong. But today, he's looking pretty good. He's got a clear margin over Valentina. He's not too far off Mariano, about a second and change back as we switch pictures to Mariano now. He's just coming around the middle of the circuit. He will be starting a timed lap with about 1 minute, between 30 seconds and a minute left in the session. We watched him come out of the pits as we were talking about Santiago coming through turn 1. Mariano will be looking to improve here, but he's only got one shot to do it. Back to Santiago, Pete. I think Santiago will be the spoiler today. Andy has it all to do himself. Andy isn't racing anyone else. He is racing against the bugbears that he's had in previous rounds. He just has to deliver today. He can forget his competitors. He just needs to put in a perfect performance. But Santiago needs a strong performance and perhaps a bit of bad luck from Mariano to help seal this team's championship, or to help steal this team's championship for Vertex.
Yeah, I mean, it's been true all season long, but it's never been truer that this race for the team's championship is about the team game. And it's about the number 2 drivers, if it's fair to call them that, in their teams. Because Andy knows what he has to do. He has to win. Mariano, he can win or he can come second. He really would like to win. Doesn't necessarily need to in order to clinch it, but that would be putting all of McLean Library's eggs into Valentina's basket. She would have to finish 4th or best or better. But look at the gap between Valentina and Eduardo now. It's really close.
It is. And Valentina's consistently run around 4th and 5th. I think we can be reasonably confident that that's where she will end up in the race. So not so much pressure on her for an unusual performance. She can do what she normally does and take the points that she typically takes, and they will be fine. But it's there's a lot of pressure on Santiago to deliver for the Vertex team today.
Yeah, we just need consistent lap times as Mariano comes across the start-finish line for the final time in the session, does not improve, and will start P2 at best in the Season 3 finale.
That was his out lap, Pete. He's coming around to start a flying lap now.
There we are. Sorry, I thought that was his flying lap. Just about made it across the line, Travis. You did predict it. Sorry, my mistake.
Yep. No, that's all right. We'll watch him come around the banking right now. We'll follow Mariano for a lap so we can get a good look at this this Kyoto 2, Kyoto National Reverse Circuit, brings the car down onto the curbs here. He wants to just miss the grass on the right, which he does, hard on the brakes. He wants to dip it into this banking and use the camber to get the car around the corner. Goes a little bit wide of the apex, but still carries the speed out to the outside. He's got a lapped car. This is a qualifying session. He's got a slower car ahead that he will want to avoid the best he can. Out to the white line and all the way down to this apex, using the banking of the corner to get the car around. A little bit of a slide, but that was a pretty good line. Out over the curb. He might just get enough. He might get close enough to Ian here ahead of him to get a slipstream, which would help him around the oval. He could gain massive time coming around the banking as he comes through this fast sweeping corner, full throttle, nice smooth line out to the exit. And he'll bring it all the way over here to the curbing on the left. Just dab the brakes to get the car to turn in. He wants to bring it down to the middle of the corner, just past the center point, but he's going to miss it a little bit wide. This isn't a great lap, Pete. I think Andy probably has this locked up in P1. But Mariano not going to give up, inching ever closer to Ian. He could be the spoiler here if Mariano can get just close enough through the next sequence of corners to get a slipstream around the longest and fastest. Well, we'll call it a straight, but it's the series of the sweeping oval bends. He goes deep into that corner, still inching closer to Ian, but not a super quick line to that sequence of corners. Going to go hard over the curb here, all the way out to the wall, and I think he's just too far away to catch Ian. I think this is a pole position for Andy, Pete.
Yeah, my apologies. I completely forgot that he was on an out lap onto a hot lap, but here we go. Final corner again, and we'll take it to the line. Let's see. Has Mariano done enough? He went a bit deep into the first of the double lefts, but he managed to tighten up the line for the exit, which means he didn't lose as much time as he perhaps would. And as he makes his run for the line, let's see what it ends up being. Will it be an improvement for him? No, it will not.
And the last car is also coming across the line pretty soon. We saw Arthur come through ahead of these cars, and then Ian ahead of Mariano, and I believe that will be everyone on circuit. Pete, that's pole position for Andy. That is the first job done, but now he has a big hill to climb.
He does indeed. Andy for Vertex, pole position with a 2:16.09, a very respectable lap time around the Kyoto Ring National Reverse Circuit. Mariano P2 for the start, alongside Andy on the front row. Then it'll be Santiago for Vertex on row 2, alongside Valentina. Eduardo and Ian for Quantum and Lilium, respectively, will line up on row 3. And then Arthur for Atrium will start on his own on row 4, currently on screen as well in the background. I think we are going to get straight into the racing action. I don't think there's going to be much of a pause here, Travis. So we will have to wait and see. Apparently, there's a couple of drivers who need to take a quick break. So fingers crossed, we'll be up and running very soon.
Yeah, as you were saying that, Pete, I think you were right until this happened at the same time. Valentina disconnected, so a little bit of drama. She didn't disconnect; her connection was dropped, so she lost connection to the server. Has since rejoined. I think a couple other drivers, as you said, are going to drop and then rejoin. We should have a race on in just a moment.
Okay, well, good. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen during the race because, Valentina needs those points. She has to finish fourth, really, in order to secure enough points for the McLean Library team to take the win in the team's championship. While the drivers are getting ready, let's just refresh you with those details. We have the McLean Library in the lead with 309 points. Vertex just behind, 15 points behind. That is the gap at the end of the season. It's not big at all. The rest of the points are pretty much settled. Our main focus today will be on the McLean Library and Vertex battle for the win. As we mentioned in the pre-show, Andy's already secured 1 point. He's got pole position. If he gets the fastest lap and the drivers finish the way they finished in qualifying, then the McLean Library will win by 1 point. But if Mariano doesn't finish second or above and Valentina has a slightly lower result, then Vertex will win. So it's all to play for in this one, Travis.
It is, and notably, I've just realized this. One of the spoilers from earlier rounds, and a source of frustration from some of the other drivers that we've heard in interviews in past rounds, is Alex, and Alex is not here today. So Alex, a younger sim racer, or new to sim racing, and still kind of learning the ropes and how to drive a virtual race car. Struggled a little bit and has been caught up in the wars with the front runners a few times. Absent today, so we will not have Alex to shake anything up. Pete, I will hand it over to you to take the start.
Thank you very much, Travis. It won't be a long affair waiting for the lights because we only have 7 drivers on the grid. So that means that the lights will come on quickly and we will be away. 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, and we're away for the 30th race of 2021. It's a slow start from Santiago, a super slow start from Santiago, Travis.
Yeah, that won't do the Vertex team any favors at all. Eduardo is through. Valentina is through. He needs to finish ahead of Valentina for them to have any chance in the team's championship. But Andy does get away in the lead. He's got Mariano right behind him in the slipstream coming through the oval turn 1 here. Mariano going to peek up to the outside, probably slow the car down a little bit so that he can tuck in the slipstream as he has done and get a run off the corner here. Andy's going to defend the inside. Smart driving from him, but he wants to make sure he doesn't go too deep into this corner. He wants to defend this position because he needs to lead, and he is clear in the lead through the first corner, though Mariano's going to try to hang it on the outside. Andy cuts off the front bumper of Mariano's car. Santiago goes off in the background, now dead last and pointed the wrong way. Looked like he had a bit of contact with Ian or maybe Arthur in the back. He's reset. That's smart. He knows he can do that. He's got a fresh car with no damage on it, though I think it wasn't damaged anyway. But up ahead, and Andy in the lead, Mariano right behind, Valentina up to third on that scrap from the start-finish line. This is what Andy needs to do, Pete. He's off in the lead, but he needs to do this for the better part of 19 more laps.
Yeah, disaster for Santiago and disaster for Vertex, but a brilliant start from Valentina. P3, this is exactly what Mariano and Valentina need. If Valentina can stay ahead of Santiago, then pretty much that's it. The team championship would be wrapped up, but we have 45 minutes of racing between now and then, Travis, and anything can happen. Eduardo, he's had a good start too.
Yep, he has had a good start. He could be another spoiler. Santiago will need to get through him. We talked earlier about how the pressure is almost entirely, well, not almost entirely, but the pressure for a solid team performance. Excuse me, Pete. I'm having trouble with my diction today. Pressure is on Santiago for a strong team's performance. Andy knows he has to be perfect up front. There is no way for them to win a team's championship without him delivering a pristine performance as Eduardo gets into the bag of Valentina. This is a bit of the luck that the Vertex team need. That's going to let Arthur through. Santiago's still pretty far behind, but he's not going to be that far behind Valentina when he comes through here. That was a 13-second gap. Looking through there, we could just see both of them in the shot as Valentina rejoined the circuit. That's going to be about a 3 or 4 second gap now, as Andy coming around to complete his first lap is going to have about a 1 second gap, a little less than 1 second gap on Mariano. This is what Andy needs. He's going to need a little bit more of that luck behind him and a solid performance from Santiago. It's all on Santiago at this point. We said, Andy knows what he needs to do. Santiago needs to recover and deliver those points for the Vertex team.
Absolutely crucial error there from Eduardo, who has brought the team's championship back alive before the end of the first lap. I don't know whether to be grateful or angry, but there we are. Valentina P6, Santiago P7, Andy and Mariano fighting out at the front. This is going to be super exciting. Hold on to your seats.
Mariano a little bit closer coming off the oval. He will have benefited from the slipstream somewhat. Andy a little bit wide out of the corner there. Mariano had the ideal line down into the banking as, Ian is going to go a little bit wide because he took the curb on the inside of this corner. You don't want to do that because it upsets the car pretty badly. You can see that clearly from how he bounced over the curbs. As we saw, I think that was Arthur going off in the background. Eduardo and Ian now side by side. This is going to bring the two of them back to Valentina and Arthur and to Santiago as well. Santiago and Valentina will relish the side-by-side racing, and if these two come together, the race is back on and even tighter than it is presently for the Vertex and McLean Library teams.
Yeah, Santiago is catching Valentina very slowly, which is important for both of them, but let's focus on this battle between Quantum and Lilium. Eduardo driving the blue and black Quantum car there, chasing the gold and black Lilium car that Ian's driving. Ian with a much tighter line around the Parabolica, and Eduardo dropping back ever so slightly, but it's not over.
Yeah, Eduardo, he's got a little bit of a gap to Ian now. Ian was down tight over the curbs coming through. We call it the Parabolica, that long sweeping right-hand corner. Looks like Eduardo got that double left-hander a little bit wrong and has fallen back just a tiny bit, but Ian a little bit ragged through there as well. That gap stays pretty steady. At the front, Mariano is not going away. This gap grows and then shrinks ever so slightly. They were pretty close coming out of the infield. Mariano got the last sequence of corners a little bit wrong and lost a tenth or so, but now, once again, he will have the benefit of the slipstream. Andy dragging him around the circuit as he sets a 2:17.33, about a second off his pole position time. But Mariano is going to have the fastest lap of the race. Andy needs that. He needs to put the hammer down. He needs to find a little bit more pace. He can run like this, keeping Mariano behind him, and that would be good for the race victory. But he does need that. He does need that point for fastest lap.
Yeah, and he certainly needs every point he can get, and he needs Santiago to overtake Valentino, because if it finishes like this, MCL will take the team's championship. So here we go.
Oh, big slide from Mariano there. That's going to give just a little bit more time to Andy, extend that gap a little bit. What Andy needs to do at this point is we see a car going way wide in the back. That's Valentina. Pete off into the barriers. That's going to let Santiago through. He will now be up to fourth position, chasing down Eduardo and Ian. This is exactly what the Vertex team need. Andy is set for the win at this point. If he can remain consistent and keep this pace, it looks like he is on for a strong win, but he needs the fastest lap. And behind him, Santiago is doing what the team needs to try to leapfrog McLean Library and take that top spot.
Yeah, if Valentina can't get past Eduardo and Ian, and Santiago can, Vertex win. But we will see. If it finishes like this, McLean Library win by 4 points.
Yeah, with the pictures just switched to the front, Andy ever so slightly extending that gap now. In this particular lap, he has hit his marks perfectly, nailed the apexes, fast through the banked corners where you can gain a lot of time. Mariano had a few big slides in some of those important corners where you need to get a good run to carry the speed down long straightaways. Andy doing a better job. Just learned that he's had a fastest second sector. Mariano a little bit wide there. He's going to come across the circuit. It's going to scrub the tires a little bit, like the extra friction and extending the track a little bit. It's going to cost him a little bit of time. Mariano not quite on pace with Andy. Andy has put in the time in the practice. He's extended that lead to 1.2 seconds coming onto the banking. And crucially, he may have just broken the slipstream. He's not going to be dragging Mariano around because he's just far enough ahead. Mariano still safe in a championship position. He's won the Drivers' Championship, as we talked about on top of the broadcast. Still in position for the team's championship, but Andy doing what he needs to do, Santiago doing what he needs to do. Andy sets the fastest lap of the race, Pete.
Yeah, he needs that, and he needs to keep doing that because both of them are on super pace. Oh, this is getting tight now. This is getting really tight. Let's see what Santiago is doing in the background. Is he gaining on Eduardo? Yes, he is. There he is.
Yeah, Eduardo going
Very
wide
quickly
through the tri-oval, we would say, over here in America. And he's going to... Yeah, Eduardo takes this late line down to the lowest part of the banking. Not all the way down on the white line. You can make up thousandths and hundredths by taking that sweeping line, that nice, shallow, gentle line into the banking, and then staying as tight on that line as you can. As Eduardo gets a little bit wrong going into this corner, Santiago checks up a little bit. He needs time, he needs positions, but he can afford to be a little bit safe because he can't afford to go off and get caught up in an accident. His competitor goes wide, nearly spears across the circuit, but manages to gather it up. Santiago on the horn, letting Eduardo know he's there, side by side, banging wheels coming into this corner. Santiago going to go wide, looking for Eduardo on the inside, going to spear across his bumper down into the banking and takes fourth position. Pete, this is good stuff from Santiago. Rough start, but he is recovering beautifully for the Vertex team.
Yeah, this is a box office race. This is what we love to see. And it had to come in the last race of the season, didn't it, Travis? We have a race on our hands now. Santiago can see Ian. He's only 3 seconds up the road. And if he gets that P3 and Valentina keeps where she is, this changes everything.
It does. Mo is working the spreadsheets in the background and telling us in our ears as the positions change that they are on level points as they run right now. Andy with pole position, fastest lap of the race, set for a win, and with Santiago in fourth position, they are level on points. That would give McLean Library the team's championship on the back of the tiebreaker, which would be Mariano's wins. But Santiago has a steam. He looks motivated. He looks clean. He's catching Ian at a rate of knots. This is there's a long way to go, but it is looking to be going. It's just going Vertex's way ever so slightly right now, but there's a long way to go yet.
Yeah, as it stands, it's McLean Library winning, but it is advantage Santiago and Vertex, you'd have to say, because this gap continues to come down. Oh my goodness me! Let's see. Let's keep our eyes on Santiago. I know you've got your eyes at the front of the race too, Travis, but we will see. Valentina's not done. She is still taking time out of Eduardo, so she's doing everything she needs to do. Oh, this is going to come down to the last lap, I can tell. It came down to the last lap last season. It's going to happen again, Travis.
Yep, I believe you are correct. It is really tight. Valentina's got a bit of damage, so Santiago on the first lap when he went around backwards. Crucially, I mean, any one of these little events could make the difference. But Santiago got a fresh car. He reset. He was turned around backwards. He reset to get pointed the right direction, and that will have repaired any damage he got in that accident that turned him around. Valentina carrying some front end damage. The camber's a little bit off on that right front, which carries not as much of the load around this circuit, but a couple crucial corners like this one as Eduardo goes wide, going to give those points right back to Valentina, but she goes wide as well, nearly gets into the quarter panel of Eduardo, but she was right on his bumper coming through these corners. Going to take a look to the inside as Eduardo goes wide, just misses his rear bumper. They will continue as they have done. Valentina trying to take that position back and get crucial points from Clean Library.
Yeah, this is it. This is the situation. Santiago is now less than a second behind Ian as well. But let's stick with Valentina. She's about to make this move, and she's ahead. But will she keep it? Let's see. Or Rubbing's racing, but not like that. You don't want to lose it like that. Or well held from Valentina.
Yeah, that amazing control of the car there. Got it a little bit wrong, and then over the sausage curbs, not once but twice, and through the grass with the rear of the car all over the place, chasing it around to keep it on the circuit. Hell of a save from Valentina. She doesn't lose too much time. Still there with Eduardo, about 1 second back. Santiago, Pete, is lining up Ian. He was 9/10 back at the start of this lap and is now right on his bumper, going to be all over him. You could throw a sheet over these two as they come onto the banking. Santiago will have the benefit of the slipstream, and I think the benefit of just a little bit more pace and slightly more confidence around this circuit. He runs the car out wide, drives smoothly off the corner. He's going to be all over Ian as they come through this last turn and then onto the start-finish line.
Valentina's managed to make her way through Eduardo just about. She hits the tyre stack. That's going to give Eduardo a run. Oh, and Eduardo hits the tyre and the back of Valentina, and those two continue their squabble. But we can now see the slipstream effect coming into effect with Ian and Santiago. Ian's trying to break it a little bit, weaving about, but Santiago is going to have the overspeed, Travis.
He will. This is all for pride for Ian. He's had some strong finishes. Started a little rough and early in the season, but has steadily improved now, running in a podium position, which he would like to keep. He had a podium position at West Hill, gathered another one in the following round, and I think he would like another one to cap off the season. But he has mirrors full of Santiago. Ian wants this third, but I don't think Santiago is going to let him have it. Ian goes a little bit deep on the brakes with a shallow entry into the corner. Santiago thinks a little bit better of it, tries to line him up coming through this corner here. He's going to be all over him coming into the next right-hand corner. Side by side, we'll see if Santiago can make yet another daring outside move coming into this fast hairpin corner. It's already done before he even gets there. Santiago into third position.
Oh, Ian's gone for a big return send. Santiago's just being a little bit more cautious today. You can see why. It's he doesn't have to rush this move, Travis. He has 13, 14 laps to get it done. He doesn't need to rush it, and this is a mature head on Santiago at the moment, trying to just bide his time. He knows he's got the pace. He just needs to pick the right moment, and
it is.
Ian's got the better of him there.
You are right. This is very smart driving from Santiago. He knows he doesn't have anything from Mariano. Mariano is 20 seconds up the road. He's not going to take second position unless he gets some terrible luck going Mariano's way and great luck going for himself. So he does, as you said, he's got 13, 14 more laps to size up Ian. He can take his time. He can get ahead. He can secure third position and then drive away. But further back, Eduardo right on the back of Valentina, but as we switch pictures and say that, he has a big slide, actually lights up the rear tires, which is very difficult to do, Pete. You can see all four tire tracks going down on the pavement, slow out of that corner, and Valentina is going to escape. As we switch back to Santiago, right on Ian's bumper once again.
Yeah, this is a bit of a contrast to some of the earlier rounds in the season. We have everybody together on the track, which is absolutely fantastic, and it couldn't happen in a better race. It's the finale. There's a team's championship on the line. Santiago is trying to get inside Ian's head with the horn. He's done this a few times, but he's on it a lot today. Let's see. Ian takes the lower line. Santiago chooses not to use the slipstream. He's just staying out wide. Maybe he's going to tuck into that slipstream later. Here he comes. This is his best opportunity that he's had in a little while.
Again, really smart driving from Santiago. He's just taking his time. He can follow around in the slipstream. He wants to time this so that he gets a good run off the turn, off the banking. Carries that extra speed using the slipstream to make the pass coming into the first corner here. He's going to look to the outside. Ian's defending. Ian really wants to keep this position, and fair play to him. There's no reason for Ian to roll over and die here and let Santiago through. He is entitled to this third position, but Santiago does the crossover move, now has the inside into this corner, but he goes a little bit deep on the brake. Ian, really smart driving from him. Santiago a little bit eager, saw a good opportunity there, but Ian using his head just as well as Santiago is. These two putting on some exciting racing for us. Santiago going to go wide again, try to do this late apex and carry the speed out of the corner. Both of these guys don't have the pace of the leaders at the front, but driving, I would say they're driving really well, Pete, and putting on a great show for us.
Yeah, they are. They're putting on a great show. 2 seconds now, the gap between Andy and Mariano. That's the highest, biggest it's been, and it's only 2 seconds. We've had 7 laps of racing as well. So the front two are a really impressive pace. Look how far ahead of Ian and Santiago they are now. Nearly 30 seconds. Unbelievable in the number of laps that we've had. So a massive void in pace. But these two, they're having fun. Santiago probably less so because he knows what's at stake if he doesn't get past Ian.
Yep, and in front, you can see that Andy wants it badly. On the previous lap, Mariano set his PB, his personal best at this circuit, at a 16:73, but it was just 300 slower than Andy's best lap of the race, which is a 2:16.70. So wow. Andy still has the fastest lap. He is. It comes and goes a little bit, but the theme of earlier races has been Mariano in front as Andy sets the fastest lap of the race with a 2:16.66. The theme of earlier races has been Mariano in the lead, just ever so slightly extending the gap in front on consistency. But today the roles are reversed. Andy is in front. Andy has the pace. Andy is extending the lead. Andy set the fastest lap of the race. He's done everything he needs to do up to this point. He needs to keep doing this, and he needs Santiago to keep the pressure on Ian. Though, as we've said, Santiago has time. He needs to secure that third position, but he has 12 more laps to do it.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Travis, and well said. I mean, Andy, he's got a better PB, so he has to drive to a lesser degree of his potential, I guess. Whereas Mariano has to set PBs to keep up with Mariano, let alone get past.
He does, and in the background, everyone is on it today. We saw a PB for Valentina in the background. She has not given up. She's trying to track down Santiago. Her pace, not quite what Santiago's is, and she's got a bit of a gap now, but she's driving the best lap she has done around this circuit. Everyone pulling hard, pushing hard to try to secure the championship for their own team, and it is tight. As they run right now, I believe this goes to Vertex. As we look back to Santiago all over Ian once again through the sequence of corners. Ian goes wide, Pete.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Santiago did the crossover, kept it down tight, and got a really fast exit out of the corner as Ian went over those curbs, and there he goes off into third. Santiago can keep his head down and hit his marks. He should be able to drive away from Ian.
If it finishes like this, Vertex win. But let's see, anything can happen. Valentina really needs to catch up to Ian now. That is really it. And Santiago needs to keep ahead of Ian. Ian is a threat in this race. He has the fate of the championship in his hands. It's fair to say.
It is fair to say he is the spoiler at this point.
Look at the gap. Look at the gap between Andy and Mariano. It went up by 1.5 seconds in the last 2 laps.
Oh yeah, yes.
Andy is on it.
Yeah, Mariano, we didn't see what happened because we were following the battle between Santiago and Ian, but Mariano's obviously made a bit of a mistake because Andy hasn't gone that much quicker. In fact, Andy's only 0.2 off his best lap, but he hasn't slowed down by any appreciable margin. But Mariano on that lap was a second slower, a full second off his best lap. So he must have gone off somewhere, made a bigger mistake than we typically see from him. So Andy doing the job. Right now, this is going in Vertex's favor. Santiago has extended his lead over Ian to a full second. Valentina, pressure is now on Valentina to pick up the pace to try to secure those points to secure as many points as she can for the McLean Library team. And Mariano now in the position we're accustomed to seeing Andy. He has to dig deep and find something to go a little bit quicker to bring this team's championship back to his own team.
14 seconds, the gap between Valentina and Ian. That is what separates McLean Library from the team's championship title at this point, and it's a big gap. Ian has to make a fairly sizable error or mess up his pit stop, which nobody has set yet, as far as I'm aware. Nobody has been down the pit lane.
No, so I was about to say that when all of that excitement unfolded at once, that pit stops, well, we were talking about Ian, and Ian, fair play to him and no blame to him, could be the spoiler today. He is absolutely entitled to whatever position he finishes in. He will drive as hard as he can to finish as well as he can. But he could be the spoiler today. If something happens to Santiago and Ian gets ahead, or if Ian finds a little bit of extra pace and is able to race him, that could spoil the points for Vertex. Likewise, pit stops, as Pete just mentioned. Oh no, Valentina's gone on her lid. She touched the curb in that hairpin. She'll want to reset now. Oh, that's a disaster for McLean Library. Pete, we were just starting to talk about pit stops, but this is the story now.
Eduardo's through, and Valentina panicked a little bit there. She was trying to remember or trying to remember to reset. And of course, with Eduardo coming, it would have caused a yellow flag if she rejoined, so she wouldn't have been allowed to reset by the game. Oh my goodness me! This is turning into quite a drama. You couldn't ask for a better season finale, Travis.
No, we really couldn't. I think we probably expected to see the races run as they typically have, with a little bit of dicing here and there, but Mariano running away in the lead. But Andy has delivered what we had hoped for: the excitement at front, the perfect performance in order to bring a championship out of, snatch it away from their competitor. And now the drama in the back. Valentina on her lid. She was pushing as hard as she could to catch Eduardo, just clipped that curb, flipped the car over a couple times, resets and rejoins. But yes, dramatic, as you said, Pete. Not over yet. Still 10 laps remaining, halfway to go in this race, but it's looking better and better for Vertex. But as Santiago ducks into pit lane, Pete, we hadn't talked about pit stops yet, but they have to be perfect. They cannot afford a drive-through penalty here, as Ian all over the binders into pit lane, just gets it slowed down in time. Santiago also
Ian's got to drive through.
Oh no, Pete!
Ian's got to drive through.
Yeah, this may have done it for Vertex. They just have to be perfect. They don't even have to be perfect now. They just have to be consistent. They can't make any mistakes. Andy needs to keep the pace just a little bit quicker than Mariano, which it looks like he can do. He'll want to make sure he secures that fastest lap of the race to keep that slight margin on points as Valentina ducks into pit lane, just gets it slowed down in time. Santiago clear of pit lane, no penalties. He is off and running once again. All he has to do is come across the finish line. Valentina struggling to find a pit box, finally gets stopped. Pete.
Yeah, interesting that this might not be over at all for the team's championship. If Ian has to come down the pit lane again to serve that drive-through. So if he then drops behind Valentina because of that, that shakes everything up again. So it's not over. Ian needs to get through the pit lane without getting another penalty. If he gets another penalty, that's it. That's game, set, and match to McLean Library. Ian is in control of the championship.
Hearing now, Mo has corrected us. I was about to agree with you, Pete, but Mo has corrected us that Valentina needs fourth the way they run right now. Yeah. Eduardo is ahead of Santiago on account of the pit stop cycle. Eduardo will drop back. So, yes, as you said, Ian needs to avoid a mistake in pit lane, or this is going to come back to Valentina. And then Eduardo, now the spoiler, running in third. We can talk about Eduardo for a minute now that we've got him in isolation, running by himself, where we can talk exclusively about him and not someone bashing doors with him. He's been in the middle of the pack this season. He's running pretty well right now. I would say he's earned this third position. He's been driving fairly consistently. He's had a few off tracks. He's banged doors with some of his competitors, but he's right there. He's earned a third position by keeping it between the lines for the most part. He could spoil this now, and he's looking for a good position or a good finish today to cap off his season.
Absolutely, and he is one of three drivers who are yet to stop. We've seen stops from Santiago, Ian, Valentina, and Arthur, which means we're just waiting on our top two, plus the man on your screen, Eduardo, who has yet to make a stop. I wonder when he's going to do it, because if he keeps running consistent laps and stays out of trouble, who knows where he could come out when he pits. He's certainly going to be ahead of Ian.
You're right. He should be ahead of Ian. He will drop behind Santiago. Santiago had gotten through Eduardo some time ago, and then Ian a few laps before he took his stop. As we switch to Andy in the lead, about 3.5 seconds. Mariano's not going away as Eduardo jumps on the brakes, throws the anchors overboard to get the car down to pit lane. He'll look for a pit box. He wants to get away as quickly as he can. He's going to drive a long way to find a box here, Pete.
Yep, and Santiago has retaken that position. Let's see where Ian is. Is Ian going to come into the pit lane now? Yes, he is. Late on the brakes again. What's he doing here? As he comes down to the pit lane, he doesn't have to stop. He just has to drive through. And let's see where he comes out in relation to Valentina. Look how slow it is. Remember that the cars are flat out going past this, but you're limited to 50 miles an hour through the pit lane. And Ian will be behind Eduardo. Look at that.
I have Ian about halfway through pit lane now, coming past the gantry as Valentina comes past the end of the pit wall. This is going to be really close. Valentina across the line now. And coming through this bend, Ian will have to bring the car up to speed and then up onto the banking while Valentina has a head of steam. These two are going to be nose to tail as they come into the first
corner.
Look at
the pace. Look at the pace from Valentina, and it's going to be
she gets
around the outside.
Sail by him on the outside. There we go, Pete.
Wow, so that drive-through for Ian has given McLean Library a sliver of hope, but Valentina still needs to get past Eduardo, and it's a big gap.
It is a big gap. He is a long way up the road, but as you said, a breath of life for McLean Library's team's championship. But Valentina goes wide onto the grass, manages to collect it, not too badly. But Ian, I believe, will have the superior pace here. It is all to do for Valentina to keep Ian behind her and to force him into some kind of mistake. She's going to come down and touch the curb again. Oh, this is what caught her out before. She just keeps it off the high part of the curb and avoids rolling the car once more. But now the pressure is on. Valentina is in the wars, has to keep Ian behind her, and that is a tall order because Ian does not have the ultimate pace of the leaders, but he is pretty quick. He is consistently a third-place finisher, and he will be motivated to take those positions back after he made a mistake and took a drive-through penalty.
Yeah, live championship standings would put Vertex ahead by 1 point if it finished like this. And if Ian gets past, then that further cements Vertex's lead. But we still have the pit stops for Andy and Mariano. When are they going to blink? Who's going to get it right and who's going to get it wrong?
No sign that they are going to come in yet. If I were Andy or Mariano, either one of them, I don't know that I would duck into the pits. I would leave it pretty late because they're both comfortable. They feel pretty confident with the cars. Certainly, Andy, the more confident today. He doesn't need to change anything. He needs to keep doing exactly what he has been doing. He has been perfect on every single lap. He's ever so slightly gapping Mariano. Likewise, Mariano has run really well. He's made a few mistakes, not quite as quick as Andy, but there's no reason for him to change anything yet. He needs a haul of points. At this point, he needs to win the race with the way the race is shaken out behind him. But he doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to change much apart from just going a little bit quicker. And a pit stop is not going to benefit him. It's just an opportunity for a mistake. I think the best thing for both of them to do right now is to just stay in their rhythm, to remain consistent, and hope that something comes in their favor before they have to take a pit stop.
Yep, Mariano's in. He's decided to take this opportunity, and he will have. Well, once he gets this over with, it will be psychological warfare between him and Andy. When the other guy does a perfect pit stop, that puts all the pressure on you. Andy just sets another fastest lap. Let's see. What will Mariano do? Normally he resets in his pit stop. That's been a trait of his previous rounds, but he hasn't picked up any damage, so he doesn't feel the need to waste time resetting. Seemed like a fairly long pit stop. He's put fuel in that car for sure.
Yeah, he was off pace in qualifying. Andy awfully quick. I wonder if he decided to fuel short to make the car a little bit lighter and try to make it a bit easier to drive, take a little bit of weight off. But that has kept him in the pit box a little bit longer than he probably would have liked. As you said, Pete, perfect timing from Andy. Sets the fastest lap of the race as Mariano's coming into the pits. 7 laps remaining. Andy doing exactly what he needs to do, everything he needs to do. Looking for him to make a pit stop. He is the only driver on circuit right now who has yet to make a pit stop. This is the last big risk for him. He needs to avoid making a mistake in pit lane. A drive-through would be deadly for their championship hopes. It would all be over, bar an absolute catastrophe for Mariano. Andy would come out in second if he had to serve a drive-through penalty, but that would be the end of their team's championship hopes. As we watch him come out of Parabolica and coming up on back markers. Pete, he is catching Arthur in 7th position very quickly. This might be the time for him to duck into the pits.
Yeah, this could have been the reason why Mariano pitted the lap earlier. Andy will be in this lap surely. He doesn't want to stay out and have to battle with back markers. He wants clear track, and once he pits, he will have that clear track. We're hearing that he's out of fuel, so he needs to come into pit lane this lap. And if he stays out, it could be trouble.
Yeah, he ran a great shot overhead here. Mo's excellent cameras and Pete's excellent camera work. Once again, we could see him coming through that final sequence of corners. Absolutely beautiful line. Totally on it. Down on the apron now. He can afford to be a little bit conservative coming into pit lane here. He's on the brakes nice and early. Gets the car slowed down on the rev limiter. No trouble getting into pit lane. He will stop in his box. He's looking for one now. He's got time. Oh, a little bit slow into the box, but he does get it stopped in time. Can't afford to make a mistake there. Oh, very quick stop, Pete. 3.6 seconds stationary, and he is away.
Needs to be careful of that speed limit. Doesn't want to go over it. He has time in abundance now. Just needs to get to the end of the pit lane. He needs to not pick up the throttle too early. He has time. Don't mess it up now, Andy, as he comes out of the pit lane. Now, and he's clear. What a pit stop from Andy, and that's going to bring the gap up even more to Mariano. We'll get an update at the first sector time, but it looks huge.
Yep, looking at Mariano now, just coming across the line as we flip back to Eduardo. We'll keep an eye on Mariano and Andy.
This is crucial. If Valentina gets past, yeah, this gap has come down a lot quicker than I expected. If Valentina gets past, that's McLean Library back in the driving seat.
They are both struggling, though. I think this will be a ragged competition for fourth position as Eduardo puts a big slide around the bend there. Valentina, we can see her sawing at the wheel, really struggling with control of that car. She comes through. Oh no, she gets into the quarter panel. She turns Eduardo around. She wouldn't have wanted to take that position that way. Now Ian steams through to take fifth position. Ian once again could be the spoiler here. Valentina and Eduardo get together. Valentina in fourth position has the points that the McLean Library team need. Andy doing everything he needs. Santiago doing everything he needs. But now Valentina doing what she needs. But she will have a mirror full of Ian in a lap or two's time. Only 6 laps remaining, 5 laps remaining when they cross the line. It's all on Ian now. Well, not on Ian. Ian is only responsible for his own race, but
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. Ian can decide the fate of the team's championship. Everything else is sorted out. Andy, Mariano, Santiago, and Valentina are in their let's call it their natural order at this point. Mariano has no response to Andy's pace. Santiago is doing a good job in P3. That's the best he could hope for today. Valentina, with her performance of the season, if you ignore the fact that the collision with Eduardo was, unfortunate. Ian now, if Ian can close up 3.6 seconds on Valentina and overtake, goodness me, what's going on there? Bit of connection problem, maybe, from Ian. If he can overtake, that's it. He's sealed the deal. Oh, he's got some connection issues now, though.
Yeah, he does. He's had a few of those slides that we saw coming around the banking. Not true slides, but it's a bit of a connection issue.
This is worrying.
Looks like we're dropping a few packets to Ian. We know he can go quicker than Valentina because he's run third position. Both he and Valentina had connection issues before the race started. Valentina was dropped by the server and reconnected before the start. Ian looking a bit more stable now, seems to have cleared up a little bit. He only needs to survive another 10 minutes. But Ian, absolutely on his own merit, he deserves to be there. He deserves to finish as well as he can do. But he is the spoiler right now. As they run, Pete, if we have our figures correct, McLean Library will take the team's championship, but Ian in fifth position is stalking Valentina and could spoil it. Up front, Andy still doing everything he could possibly need to do, running a perfect race. Santiago doing the best that he could possibly do. Again, nearly a perfect race from Santiago. But as it is, it may not be quite enough. Ian stalking Valentina could spoil this for McLean Library.
Yeah, but as he comes across the split line, I'm going to see if my narrative is correct or not. It is. Valentina is gapping Ian. So in a change of events from previous rounds where Ian has had superior pace over Valentina, the opposite is true today. And right when she needed it, Valentina is doing everything she needs to secure McLean Library's team championship hopes by 1 point.
Yeah, and I'm following Ian around. We talked earlier in the season about how Ian struggled a little bit with the front tires, getting too much heat into them and sliding a lot. He's gotten that under control. He's altered his style to save the equipment. The front of the car looks really good, but hearing that he is carrying some damage that might be compromising his race, Valentina getting away ever so slightly, Ian not able to catch her, but We know that the midfielders are given to mistakes a little bit more than the leaders are, so it's not over yet. Ian wants to secure a fourth position to finish as well as he can, but right now, all for McLean Library. It got away from him, and it has come back despite a perfect performance from the Vertex drivers.
Yeah, 6.5 seconds-ish between 6.28 seconds between Ian and Valentina. Ian's got a bit of damage, and engine damage we're hearing as he was braking for the pit lane. For his first stop, he's given himself some damage, or was it his second? Potentially his drive-through, he's given himself some damage. So that looks like it's sealed that. So Valentina
really
needs to make no mistakes in 4 laps.
Yep. Andy further cementing his dominance at front. He has set the fastest lap of the race, 16:25, about 2/10 off his pole position time. So not giving up. He could afford to back off a little bit and be safe, but he's in a rhythm. You don't want to disrupt a rhythm. So Andy's done the job. Santiago's done the job. They have an enormous lead over Santiago in third position. Andy 55 seconds ahead. Pete, that is a stonking good race pace.
Oh yeah, I mean you can't take anything away from these two. Their race pace all season long has been incredible. You have to think that if Andy hadn't gone on holiday and was able to put in his usual amount of practice, we could have had a very different situation on our hands today. But there we are. These top two really are doing a brilliant job. And today Andy is now 8 seconds ahead of Mariano. That is not a small gap. That is big.
It is big. We're accustomed to seeing Mariano out front, but today, as we have said, the Mariano show a few times because he's just so consistent and so clean in front, and he extends that gap every lap. Runs a racing driver's dream out in front. But today, it is the Andy show. He has made a spotless performance, a pristine drive in front, pole position, fastest lap of the race. He will have led every lap if it finishes as he is doing right now. He will have the Grand Chelem, but it will not be enough unless Valentina makes a mistake and Ian is able to get by. But Valentina is extending that lead, Pete. It is up to 9 seconds.
Yep, doesn't look like it's going to change either. Valentina, barring any issues, is taking the team's championship into her own hands. And there we can see from Andy's car, he's got back markers.
Yeah, he won't have wanted that, but he can afford to get through carefully. He doesn't have to worry about Alex. Alex has been the story of overtaking back markers in earlier races. Andy, I think he'll feel a little bit more confident getting through Arthur. Eduardo, certainly more predictable. He won't want to see these back markers, but he has a buffer. And I don't think Mariano can touch his pace and snatch the fastest lap. So Andy just needs to be smart. He needs to be patient. He can't be too patient. But he can afford to take a little bit of time to get through these back markers safely and round out the last 3 laps of the race.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But let's see. Oh, this is going to come down to the wire. 10 seconds now the gap between Valentina and Ian. So Ian is dropping back and is no longer really the man with the control over the championship. It kind of rests on Valentina just to do a consistent job at the end here. As we see the back markers starting to come into play. That's Arthur, who should get well out of the way. He does. Gets on the brakes nicely, and that lets Andy fly through.
Yep, Andy gives him the thank you, the double tap on the horn. Very polite of Arthur. We're accustomed to seeing him getting well out of the way and perfectly under control. Not running as quick as the leaders, but he's a very polite and thoughtful driver. So hats off to him. Andy sets off in pursuit of Eduardo now, who was in the thick of it a few laps ago. Now running pretty far behind Ian. And speaking of Ian, that gap extended even further. Pete, Valentina just running consistent laps. She's running near her quickest pace of the race, 2:20s on the previous laps. And Ian's gotten the gap down. The timing just updated. He had gotten the gap down to 11 seconds from 13, but now it is back up to 13 once again.
Yep, ebbing and flowing. Santiago, he's got a big buffer ahead and a big buffer behind. So he doesn't have anything to worry about, really, as Eduardo moves out of the way.
Yep, in the lead. Andy gave him a bump of the horn as Eduardo goes off in the gravel, well out of Andy's way. Andy went a little deep in the corner. I think he misjudged the inside line there. But through safely. Eduardo out of the way. Also out of Mariano's way, or will be shortly as they come through these corners.
Yeah, Arthur's going for the wide line out of the final corner, and Mariano's going to have to get past these two on the oval. Arthur dives out the way. There we go.
Yeah, that was pretty close. Arthur probably could have stayed out there. That will have had Mariano's heart in his throat. He knows he needs to try to catch Andy, and it's a little more than he can do. But running into a back marker would have ruined his day for sure. Mariano will get the benefit of the slipstream here with Eduardo. Andy's previous lap, not as quick as he has been running, getting through the back markers carefully, but 2 laps remaining, coming down onto the banking one more time. Mariano falling back to almost 10 seconds now. Andy and Santiago have done everything they possibly can. It is on Valentina and Ian to spoil it now, but I don't know that they will. I think this is it for McLean Library Bar. A huge mistake from Valentina.
Yeah, Eduardo gets on the brakes or lifts off a bit early and lets Mariano through. So that was no drama whatsoever, and that's what we like to see. Our race not being destroyed by back markers. There we are, all good from the top, from the back markers there.
And I don't expect, we saw somebody go off in the background. I think that was Arthur, one of the back markers, and not somebody running for position. It was not
What's going
Santiago
on here?
down on the banking.
What's going on here? Why is he going in the pits? He has stopped,
That's a
right?
good question. He has stopped.
Yeah.
I thought he had. Yes, he had stopped because he cycled down to 5th position behind Ian.
Why is he in the pit lane?
That's a good question. I mean, he has a big enough gap that if he has any damage or if he feels like it's a little too close on fuel, then he's safe to make a pit stop. He didn't have any suspension damage.
He has enough fuel to finish, so this is a bit of a weird one. It's a fuel stop, so okay, he must have thought he didn't have enough. Santiago, you had enough fuel, pal.
I mean, that's if he were at all concerned, if he had even just the faintest worry that he might be short on fuel, he had the time in hand to make a stop. So not a bad decision, just a little bit surprising.
Yeah, and not endless time. He hasn't got endless time. He can't afford any mistakes now in the last 2 laps of this race.
No, it'll be... So Valentino won't be able to catch him, but Andy looked like he was a little slow off the final corner there. No, I think he's fine. Just a trick of the camera as we switched to him while we were previously watching a faster car come through. He still got the gap on Mariano. But Santiago came out of the pits just a few seconds ahead of Valentina. I don't know that Valentina won't be able to catch him. The gap is too big, and Santiago has been too quick. Santiago through the first sequence of corners now, and Valentina just now jumping on the brakes to enter those corners.
Yeah, but any mistakes now? Any mistakes from Santiago?
Now. Yeah, so Andy on the final lap in the lead. Mariano in pursuit. Ian nowhere near Valentina. In fact, he's been lapped by the leader now. Andy will be coming up on Valentina shortly. I don't think he'll catch her before the end of this lap. It's all McLean Library. It is slipping away. They did everything they needed, Pete, and it looked like until about lap 12 or 13 they had it, and then it comes right back to McLean Library with a big mistake from Ian.
Yeah, in the end, you couldn't ask anything more from the top 2 teams. They did everything they needed to, and they needed a little bit of luck and a little bit of intervention from the back markers. It happened right at the start. Santiago was off. Valentina was rolled. Ian and Eduardo were definitely in the mix, but the length of this race has helped them out, and it's all shuffled back into position. But driver of the day for me, if it finishes like this, is Valentina. I have to hand it to her.
It's a toss-up for me. Andy, who has run perfectly. He needed to run perfectly. He has run perfectly. But Valentina, some difficulties early and middle of the race, but she gathered it up. She's driven consistently. She'll have to come around. She's ahead of Andy on the road, so there's still time for it to go awry for McLean Library and to come good for Vertex. Andy just has to negotiate a few more corners, and then he can coast it home. He's got a 10-second gap behind him. Ian well behind Valentina. Ian's drive-through penalty and Valentina's collision with Eduardo, the stories of this race. Ian would be ahead were it not for that penalty. That dropped him pretty far back, and he had damaged his engine before he came in. Mariano going to come through and lap Ian now. But Pete, I will let you take it away to bring Andy across the line.
Thank you very much. For the final time in 2021, we will congratulate a winner across the line. And it's going to be purple, 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 fastest lap, pole position, and the race win. He's already flashing his lights as Andy takes the win in Wayports Racing League Season 3, round number 10. Oh, well, he drove an absolutely perfect race. You cannot take anything away from the guy. It's going to be a Mariano coming across in P2 for McLean Library. That is 10 seconds, the gap. Then we have Eduardo coming across the line. He is a lap down. Here comes Arthur, also a lap down. And then it's a long wait, I'm afraid, because we have to see Santiago across the line, who will be our next driver in P3. He's got half a lap to go. So as we see our 1 and 2 pull up at the end of the back straight there, and everybody else fighting through.
Yep, we'll look for Santiago to come across the line in a few moments' time. He should be through the final sequence of corners in just a moment and then back onto the banking. You're watching from the start-finish line. We'll see him come through. And I am following Valentina, who is most of the way around the circuit now. She's coming through the Parabolica, our parody of the final corner at Monza. And she is off. We can see Santiago in the distance just ahead of Valentina. She's coming through this double left-hander. Nearly has it sealed for McLean Library. She just has to avoid a mistake from here. It would be very difficult to make a fatal mistake at this point on the circuit. She can tiptoe around. She has no competition. The only competition it would be Eduardo behind her. Actually, no, they were flagged off. Valentina, all she has to do is cross the line at this point. She has no competition behind. She could roll the car and take a full minute to reset it, and she would not lose a position. This is done for McLean Library. Santiago is going to come across the line. Perfect performance from Andy. Perfect performance from Santiago. They did everything they could. This will be third position for Santiago, but coming behind him through the final bend right now, she can see the start-finish line and the green light of the gantry. Valentina will cross the line to take fourth position, and Pete, that is a team's championship by the slimmest of margins for McLean Library.
Absolutely. And I just want to bring into perspective how long we had to wait for Santiago and Valentina to come round. What a gap. 1 minute, 48 seconds between Andy and his teammate. What a performance from Andy. But sadly, it is not enough, because that means that McLean Library do, in fact, lift the team's championship by 1 point.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. That we talked about this story at the top. You went through all of the scenarios, Pete. I don't know that we would have expected it to come and go as many times as it did during the race, but exciting show from all the drivers. We've got to hand it to Vertex. They were just perfect. Everything they could possibly have done to secure those points. And then Valentina went through a number of difficulties during the race, but was able to compose herself, was able to drive to fourth position and secure those crucial points when Andy had the advantage over Mariano today. Hell of a race, very exciting. The most exciting this season. Perfect way to cap off this series, Pete.
Yeah, 100%. That was awesome. I could not have wished for a better ending. Andy for Vertex, bittersweet moment, really. Finishes in P1, 44 minutes and 4 seconds. Best lap of 2 minutes 16.19. Stunning pace. 10 seconds ahead of our Season 3 champion, Mariano for McLean Library. Santiago, good job after a very sketchy start. We had our hearts in our mouth there. We didn't know what was happening with Santiago at the back, but he drove from the back to P3. Then Valentina for McLean Library, who was still, my driver of the day, definitely. She had a lot of work to do today, Travis, in order to seal that team's championship for McLean Library. Ian, well, he had the fate of the championship in his hands as well at some point, but some engine damage has cost him the ability to sort that out. So there we are, P5 for him. Eduardo, he was in the mix too, in P6. And Arthur, who we didn't really see much of today, driving his own race, finishing in P7. Great to see these guys out on the track for one final time this season. Alrighty, I think that just about sums up our action here, but we are going to take a quick break and bring you some driver interviews. Don't go anywhere. What a race. Hello and welcome back to round 10, the final round of Wayports Racing League Season 3. We are just about ready for driver interviews, so we're going to switch over to Wayports right now and say hello to the drivers. In the center of our podium here, we have Andy for Vertex. Andy, it was a perfect race, and unfortunately, the team's championship has slipped through your fingers this season by 1 point. But how do you feel after that dominant performance? 10 seconds the gap in the end.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was a great race. Yeah, by Santiago and me, we tried everything in this race to save the title, but it didn't take place. But the race was fun as well, and it was, as you said, kind of perfect and no mistakes. And even the desperate attempt of a second place driver didn't help. Did help me more than him, probably. Yeah. So fantastic. That 1 point, I don't mind. It was a brilliant season for Vertex. Thanks to Santiago, also brilliant, and they deserved it. The McLean Library, of course. Mariano won a lot of races and had definitely a much better pace in season 3 than he had in season 2. So I give him the number 1 back, and the team also. That's fine.
But yeah, you took the win in the final round, and it was a thrilling final round. Me and Travis had a lot of fun commentating on that one. Mariano and Andy, you both did exactly what you needed to do, and left your number 2 drivers to try and sort it out for the team's championship. Mariano, over to you. How do you respond to Andy's pace going forward? He's on another level again.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, today was difficult. I didn't have the pace. I couldn't put in the laps that would have given me an edge. So during the week, if you don't do that, you pay for it, and that's what you saw. It's nice though. I like this. I prefer this. I prefer seeing Andy attempting to win with pace and not with muscle or outside of the rule book. But yeah, it's good. I would have liked it to be a little closer, but yeah, I'm thrilled to have come away with both championship titles. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, you've done that. You've sealed the deal, and by a single point. What do you reckon about that? I mean, yeah, it really came down to Valentina, and I mentioned in commentary that she really put in the performance of her season in order to climb back through the field, get past Eduardo, get past Ian, and secure McLean Library that win.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats to Valentina for that. Tremendous effort, moving countries in the middle of all this and still sticking with the league and being able to pull in that performance. That's amazing. I saw her in my rear view mirror, so at some point she was like in 3rd place or something. So I was really excited for that, and I'm so glad that she made the difference. She was able to get us that extra point, and yeah, well, everything counts. It was a long season. It was a long racing year, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to the next.
Wow, that's great to hear. Santiago, for a word from you, if you don't mind. We saw you have a bit of an incident at the start of the race, but you sorted it out. You got back through, and you finished P3 on the podium. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed driving on this map. It was had with Ian. It was amazing. Also, it was an excellent season, and also congrats to McLean Library, and thanks to my teammate Andy.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thank you very much, Santiago. It was a really great season from you. You improved massively throughout, and you did everything you could today. There was a huge gap between you and the 2 guys ahead of you, but you finished 3rd, which was the best you probably could have hoped for. Did you think that it had slipped away?
Sorry?
Do you think P3 overall at the beginning of the race? Did you think it wouldn't be possible after you had that incident on that one?
It was difficult. I thought, I couldn't make that, but at the end, I watched all the time lapse of the other drivers, and I thought, well, it could be possible. Then what happened to Ian? It was a shame, but that gave me the chance to the podium.
Absolutely. Well, a word from all 3 of you then. How would you summarize your season 3 and your 2021 championship overall? Let's start with you, Andy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun this season, though it was very eventful. Also, apart from running that league, of course. So it was a big effort to be on every race and not miss one, as you know. Yeah, but still, it's more fun than hard work.
Good. Well,
So
that's
let's
good
look
to hear.
forward.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Andy. Mariano,
Thank
your
you.
thoughts?
Simply amazing. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. So having these wins, sometimes if you look back at the fights we had with Andy, the little super close gaps in some of these races, most of these races, it's kind of like unbelievable to look back and see so many wins this season. So I'm really thrilled. Yeah, more of this, please.
Hopefully. Santiago, over to you.
It was a lot of fun, a lot of training, a lot of battles, a lot of races. So for me, it was excellent. I want to thank you for letting me participating, and just that.
Good stuff. Well, thank you all three of you for your interviews in Wayports, and yeah, hope to see you in the next season, whatever form that takes. So, from all of us to all of you, thank you very much for putting on the racing action this year. It was
Thanks.
awesome to watch.
Yeah,
See ya.
thanks for your brilliant work. Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
take care.
Bye.
There we go then, the drivers on the podium for Wayports Racing League Season 3, the finale. And I think we have a graphic to confirm the final results of the championship. So let's fire that up and run through it. Here we go then. It is the McLean Library with 339 points, winning by a single point over Vertex with 338. Quantum in P3 with 117. Lilium finished P4 with 88 points. Atrium P5 and Step Up finishing with 16 points in P6. That's just about all we've got time for, and that is the end of the 2021 season of the Wayports Racing League. We hope to see you next time. Have a good one from all of us to all of you. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.